Hi everyone, welcome to Games of the Week for the 3rd of October, and let's get right to it. So the games on the channel this week, there was Coffee Roaster on Wednesday, and that is a solitaire only game, although we have played it co-op, just making the decisions shared. But in this game there are a ton of different coffee beans to choose from, and we're trying to make the perfect blend. You put a lot of different tokens, depending on the bean that you've picked, into a bag, and you're going to be doing actions with certain tokens. You want to be upgrading your beans from level 0 upwards to try and get the perfect score, because each bean has got a different total that you want to get to in the cut test at the end. And you want to get rid of all the bad things, the smoke, the hard beans, the reject beans. There's quite a bit to think about, and it's a really fun solo game. That's Coffee Roaster. And on Sunday we had the Perfumer, which is another really interesting game, where you are using your sense of smell, or lack of it in my case, to try and work out what these scented cards smell like. You have cards all around the table that you know what they smell like. It says lavender on it and it smells like lavender. And then we have all of the same cards but upside down in sleeves, so you don't know what they are. And in between your turns you will have some of these cards to smell and try to work out what your secret recipes are that will be combinations of these scents. And at the same time there is a light pick up and deliver game going on, where we are trying to grab ingredients and send them all around the world to complete orders. And that's another very interesting and unique game, the Perfumer. And I will mention that coming up this week there will be games that I have been sent to make videos on. I still can't believe that I've been sent anything to make a video on, but there are some that there will probably be more videos than usual this week, because I am a little behind and I want to make sure that these videos are up before Essen, so people can decide if they want to take a look at them. There's Chidango, KO Heroes, Guns and Steel Renaissance, Azuchi Castle, Okrakoke, I think it's called, the pirate-themed little card game, and I think a couple more, depending if a couple more arrive before Essen. So there will probably be a little jump in activity before Essen, and probably afterwards as well, to try and keep up with the games that I get from there. And in game news this week, there isn't any. And maybe the couple of things I have seen I've put into my Essen list, because the rest of this video is going to be part of my Essen videos. There's going to be a top 10 Essen games. There's going to be a top 10 expansions, because I noticed that my top 10 list was a lot of expansions were in it, so I separated them out and then kind of realised there wasn't really many more than 10 expansions in that list. But regardless, I've done it now. And this video is going to be the games that didn't make the top 10s, just in alphabetical order. I haven't organised all of the games that didn't make it to the top 10. There's a lot of games to get through, so I'm going to try and be brief with all of them, and I will put on the screen the name of the game, the designer, and where you can get it as well. So if you are going to Essen, then you know where to go to take a look at these games. I should mention before we start that there are a few games that I have been sent to make videos on that might have made the lists. I'm not sure. It's impossible to say now, because now that I've got them or played them, it's hard to say how much I would have been anticipating them had I not got them. So they will be included in this, the extra video instead, but they could have made it higher, I'm not sure. So let's get started. First up, we have Four Gods from Christophe Boelinger, and this is a real-time tile laying game where we play as one of four gods, and we are trying to get profits to our side of the board. And there is a frame in the middle of the table where we will be laying tiles inside to build up this world together and try and make paths for these people to get to us. And it's real time with everybody playing in the same world, as I said. So if somebody makes a path that's a perfect connection for you, you can slam down a tile and redirect where the path is going. If there is a point where you don't think a tile can be placed anymore because it would violate the rules, then you can place a token there and make a city for yourself. But if somebody does find a tile that can go there, they can smash your city, and you were too confident that there wasn't a tile that could go there. It sounds very interesting. There is Aeon's End, and this is from Kevin Riley. This looks like a fantastic cooperative kind of deck builder kind of game, where we are taking on these big, powerful, scary-looking bosses. And the thing that looks really interesting in this is, apart from the components, there's dials to track health for things and these beautiful tiles. There's a lot of great-looking stuff in the game. but the gameplay seems very interesting as well, where there's a real emphasis on cooperation and playing cards to boost allies, making sure that somebody can do something really useful on their turn, whereas you might not get to do much on yours. You can make sure that somebody can do something really good on theirs, as opposed to a legendary where we are working together for the same goal, but our kind of decks and everything are very separate. We are just trying to make sure that we can all do something effective on our turn, whereas in this we are trying to boost each other so that one person can do the really big damage against the boss when it's needed the most. Next is Alchemidus by Shimpei Sato, and this is a game where we are alchemists trying to turn clay into iron into gold. So in this we have a dice that represents clay, and then a dice that represents iron, and then dice that represent gold. So we need to turn our dice from the value of clay into whatever is on the gold card. And we have a display of dice manipulation cards in the middle of the table. And when all of this is revealed, everybody is going to look at these cards and try and find a way using these dice manipulation cards to turn the clay into gold. And the first person to do it kind of announces as quick as possible that, I've done it, and all of the dice have costs. The more powerful effects will cost more. The person who's quickest says, I've done it, it's cost me 20. Then everybody else has 1 minute. You flip a timer, everyone else has 1 minute to try and do it for cheaper. And when the time is up, the person who did it first announces how they did it, and then the person who did it cheapest and correctly kind of explains how they did it. If they're right, the person who is fastest gets 1 point, but the person who is cheapest gets 2 points, so it's always better to be cheapest. But that looks like a really interesting kind of puzzly, everybody trying to do it as quickly as they can kind of game. Next is Capital from Filip Milunski. And in this game, we are laying tiles to build up the city of Warsaw that has a very interesting past. And it's a drafting game. We are building a grid of the city. And it's one of those games, the Seven Wonders Among the Stars kind of thing, where play the tile and pay its cost, or discard the tile and get 3 money. And love both of those games, by the way, so already interested in the gameplay of this. And in this you can overwrite old buildings and get a discount on your new building, but you obviously lose the power or the benefit of whatever you're overwriting, so that seems interesting as well. There's no rules for this at the moment, so it could even have made it to the top 10. I'm not 100% on what's going on in the game, but this is from the designer of CV, which I love, and Granna put out a lot of good games, so definitely looking forward to Capital. Next is Coal Baron, the Great Card Game, and this is from Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer, an amazing design duo, and this is kind of on here. I've not played Coal Baron. It's one I haven't gotten around to actually buying yet. I know it's supposed to be good. I haven't actually watched a video on it yet, but it's one I've wanted. But I have a ton of Kramer and Kiesling games. There's Porta Nigra, Palaces of Carrara, Tikal. I have a list somewhere. Adventureland, that was last year. There's a ton of amazing games from these two, and separately as well, they've done some amazing games. So a new game from them seems fantastic to me. Next is Coffee Roaster from Saashi, and this I explained at the beginning of the video. It's a solo game where you're trying to make different blends of coffee. You can watch my playthrough or review to find out more about that, but definitely a very interesting game. Next is The Colonists from Tim Puls, and this is from Lookout. It's a civilization game where we have a big display of tiles, of hexagonal tiles on the table, and we have these markets where our pieces start. It's worker movement rather than placement. We only have one worker and it has to move in certain ways. So it's not just checking to see if a tile is free for you to go and grab the resources or do the action or whatever. You need to make sure that you can work out a path through this kind of puzzle of the way the board's been set out to work out if you can actually do the actions you want to do. In the game, everyone is a mayor of a different village, and the ultimate goal of the game is to get no unemployment in our village. So we need to make jobs, we need to make houses, we need education, but resources are very limited, and storing them is a problem. And there is an example rule. Well, it's not just an example. It's kind of a walkthrough of a game, an example of a quick game of Colonists, and it sounds very interesting. The full rulebook isn't up, so it could have even made it a little bit higher. It's kind of one I'm very tempted to get, but I'm not quite sure. But I know it'll be quite limited as well, so that's another thing that makes me want it. But it's also going to have solo support, and it seems like a game that you can take from quite a simple setup and expand it into a really complex one. So it really sounds like there's a lot of interesting things going on in the Colonists. Next is Cottage Garden from Uwe Rosenberg, and this is another kind of patchwork style game where we're going to have puzzle-shaped pieces, and we are going to be placing them to try and cover up certain spaces and leave other spaces open to score the most amount of points. And we will have multiple gardens to fill over the course of the game. When you fill one, you're going to get another board to fill up. And I love patchwork. It was two years ago, I think, that came out, and that was it's probably still one of my favourite smaller games. And so first off, more from Uwe Rosenberg, can't wait for that, and more kind of patchwork, puzzly style gameplay. Definitely excited about Cottage Garden. Next is Dice Stars from Bruno, Cathala and Ludovic Maublanc, and this is a type of game I love, a quick dice game where everyone has a scoring sheet. Love scoring sheets. And in this, you roll a certain number of dice, and on your turn you will be able to take all the dice of one number or one colour, and there is a really interesting looking grid on the scoring sheet of how you're going to fill in the spaces based on what you take. And there is a really interesting push your luck element to it as well as rolling numbers, you can roll stars, which won't be worth anything if you take the things and write them in your points section, but if you only choose to take stars, you can fill in a multiplier section on the other side of your scoring sheet. Now, if you just leave it alone, you're going to get the points that you earned normally. If you fill in a multiplier line completely, and some are smaller than others, one's just got one space and then 2, 3, 4 spaces for the ones that are worth more points. But if you fill in the whole line of multiplier spaces, you're going to double your score for that line. But if you start filling it in and you don't finish it by the end of the game, you score nothing for that line. So there is a interesting little push your luck element in there. It looks like a really fun small box little dice game. Next up is Dungeon Rush, and this is from Rustan and Eli Hackinson. And I have to admit, this caught my eyes because one of the designers of Nations is involved. This is nothing like Nations, by the way. It's just why it caught my eye. This is a light kind of dungeon adventure card game where there is a speed element where everyone has two heroes. One is for your left hand and one's for your right hand. And we're going to be quickly revealing challenges for these heroes to face. And you have to decide which hand is going on what. And if you can defeat the monsters and progress in the dungeon, you're going to earn equipment to make your hero more powerful and loot to earn the most points by the end of the game. It sounds like a really cool game, but the only hesitation is that Board Game Geek and the publisher's website both say it's a 2 to 5 player game, but the rules, which I'm tempted to lean towards them being right, the rules say 3 to 5. So if it's 3 to 5, I'm not interested, but it does sound very interesting either way. Next is Elevenses for One and Bowling Solitaire, and these are from David Harding and Sid Saxon respectively. This is a little duo pack from Eagle Griffin Games, and very interested in solo games, not just for doing them for the channel, but also Elevenses for One was requested a while ago, and I did print it out, but haven't got around to learning it yet, but this would be a great way to pick it up, an actual commercial version of it, and Bowling Solitaire sounds quite fun as well, so I'm going to look out for that one. Next up is First Class Unterwegs im Orient Express, and I'm sorry I don't speak a word of German, so any time I try and pronounce, I can't even do English, you see. Every time I try and pronounce something German, I do apologise in advance, including names. I should have said that at the beginning of the video, rather than I don't have to say it every time I think I've mispronounced something. But anyway, First Class. It's from Helmut Offley, and I love his games. He was a co-designer of Russian Railroads, and he made Trambahn, which was a fantastic 2-player train-based card game. And in this game, there's not really much info yet. There's a nice picture of the cards. The art looks nice, and they've got numbered cards that look like you're making luxury trains or cheap trains. But in this we will be building a rail network, either trying to serve luxury passengers or just try and serve the most passengers. And the interesting thing in this is it says that it's a card game that feels more like a board game because there are 5 different modules, and in each game you use 2, so every game should be very different in theory. As I said, there's not much info about this, so it's one of those where it could have been in the top 10, I'm not sure, but I will definitely be going over to check this one out. Next up is Forestaurant from Oliver Oz, and this is a cooperative game where we are managing a restaurant for animals. So you have to be aware of where you sit the different types of animals, which is important to consider, the meals you're going to serve them, and how well you prepare those meals. And so there is a lot of things to juggle, and you're also trying to manage the stress of the guests as well. If you make them wait too long, then they're going to leave and you're not going to earn anything. It sounds very fun, and I'll definitely be going over there to find out more about the game. Next is The Game Extreme from Stefan Bendorf and Reinhard Storp, and I loved the game. It was a lovely cooperative puzzle of trying to... It's very simple, just you have numbers 2 to 99, and you have 4 piles, 2 are going up, 2 are going down from 100, and you need to play 2 cards on your turn. You have to play 2 cards. And so it leads to very interesting decisions because usually you're going to mess up something for someone else before it's your turn again. And you're not allowed to say what numbers you've got. So it's always a agonizing thing when you know you're going to have to ruin something, and just how many people are you going to upset by ruining, a certain pile. And it's sometimes a very difficult game. And this promises to make it even more difficult, which I'm not sure is completely necessary, but it's going to do it anyway. A lot of cards are going to have instructions on them now when you play them, and some are going to just have effects when you play them, like maybe this ends your turn, and some are going to have lasting effects until that card is covered up again, like everybody only draws 1 card no matter how many cards they played, which is terrible because you're going to... your choice is going to be really reduced, so you're going to be even worse at trying to pick a good card to go on a pile. So I am interested in checking out The Game Extreme. Next is The Golden Sails from Yuri Zurovlev, and this is the designer of Viceroy, which I loved, where you're trying to build a pyramid of cards to earn points that all have different effects, and there was a nice little auction system where you both had to blind bid, and if you both bid for the same card, you threw your money away and had to bid again. There was a lot of nice things in Viceroy, and this is a card drafting game, and the cards are kind of... They're square cards that are split into 4 kind of triangles, and so it's going to have 4 types on every card, but there are 5 types across all of the cards. You can have an expert for each type, so when you take a card, you put it next to your expert of that type, and you can't take another card of that type again until all of your experts have taken a card. So there's a very interesting kind of balance between the things in there, and it's a card drafting game where everything scores differently. So there are types where animals score based on different cards that are shuffled at the start. There's different scoring cards that will define how the animals are scored. The spices need different kinds of spice to score more points. The gems are numbered and you want sequences of numbers to score the most points. Generally love card drafting games and these variable point scoring games, so this sounds very interesting. And add on top of that the designer of Viceroy. I'm very excited about the Golden Sails. Next, Kepler 3042, and this is from Simone Cerruti Sola and Placentia Games, and I really enjoyed Britann from last year. That was their published game from last Essen. So in this we are in the year 3042 and we are exploring the galaxy. We are looking for planets to colonize now that we've finally got the technology to get there. And the really interesting thing in this is it's a resource management game where everybody has a kind of finite amount of resources that they can produce and spend throughout the entire game. So choosing to spend more to boost certain actions is going to be really great for you in the short term, but you have a limited amount, so you're going to have to make sure you're going to go down the right path because you might end up running out of resources if you're not careful. Next is Key to the City, London, from Sebastian Bleasdale and Richard Breeze, and this has some great similarities to Keyflower, but some key differences as well. keyed. I'm sorry about that. We are building real landmarks of London. It's a more streamlined and faster playing game than Keyflower, but promises to keep the same level of depth and interactivity in it. And we are trying to make point scoring networks by connecting the right tiles to each other. And I really enjoyed Keyflower. It's been quite a while. It's maybe been 2 years or longer since I played it, because my girlfriend Rachel, who I play most games with, absolutely hated it. So it had to be a game that there was no point keeping in the end. But very excited about Key to the City London, and hopefully this will be one that we can keep. Next is La Granja, No Siesta, the dice game. And I really liked La Granja. It was a fantastic game where we had these boards with little bits cut out. So when you played all of these different cards that you had, you put them in different positions, and different parts of the card would be showing that would boost different parts of your farm. So you could have powers, you could boost the number of animals you could score. It was a very interesting game with a lot going on, and this is the dice game. So I like La Granja. I tend to like ... the dice game anyway, and this is another game where we have beautiful scoring sheets of trying to cross off, grabbing different animals and crops and things. There's dice drafting, it has a solo mode, a lot of things going. Very excited about La Granja No Siesta. Next, The Legend of Sabao from Lu Xiu. And this is a business game where we are using worker placement and area control to gain as much profit as possible, and sometimes making tough calls, having to sacrifice things for the good of the caravan. And we are following in the footsteps of a Buddhist fable. So it's not one I know a lot about, but I'm looking forward to finding out more at Essen. Next, London Dread from Asker Johansson, and this was in my top 10 Gen Con games. So just to recap, it's a co-op story-based investigation game where there is a real-time planning phase where we're scrambling to find out what we're going to do in this round, and then the timer stops and we kind of resolve the effect of what we've done, and we are trying to, unravel the mystery. It sounds very interesting, and very excited about London Dread. Now we have Martians, A Story of Civilization, and this is from Gregors Oklinski and Christophe Wolicki, and in this game we are exploring Mars on a brand new human colony. We need to develop technologies and build on the planet to make it habitable, and there are a lot of modes of play in this. There's a solo mode, which I'm interested in. There is, a normal competitive mode, and also there is cooperative, very interested in that, and semi-cooperative, which I'm not as interested in, but still it's a massive amount of variety for a game to have. And it's another one that I don't know that much about, but I'll definitely be going over there to try and have a look at the game. I think one other thing on this was I'm sure I saw people posting that it wasn't going to be available, but it's on the list and has a price. I'm not sure. Next up, Motion Pictures, Movies Out of Cardboard, and this is from Alexandros Kapidakis, and this is from DrawLab, who had a part in the minis of Project Elite, which isn't on the screen anymore, but that was a game I really loved. And this is a card game with deck building elements, so big check from me already. It's movie themed, and that's another thing that I was very excited about. And in this we are competing for projects by hiring the right filmmakers and taking the right projects, because each category, like movies, TV series and commercials, want different skill sets to be able to complete them effectively. And there are also these trilogies that we will be trying to work on over the course of the whole game as well. And it promises to be good for families and gamers alike. So definitely looking forward to going to DrawLab and checking out Motion Pictures. Next up is Papa Paolo from Fabrice Vandenbergard. And for a start, how fun is it to say Papa Paolo? I was in as soon as I read pizza themed, but it sounds like an interesting game as well. We are placing tiles to build a city, and by building the city we are going to define where the customers are that want to be delivered pizza, and we will be boosting abilities over the course of the game to make us more effective at different actions. And there is, there's an auction element to it. There's a lot of things kind of mixing together in this, and really looking forward to trying out that game. And of course it's fun to say Papa Paolo. Next is The Perfumer from Chulan Cow, and this, I talked about it at the beginning of this video, and you can look at my playthrough and review if you'd like to know more. It's it's got real scented cards to try and figure out what they smell like, and there's a little pick up and deliver game going on at the same time. It's a very unique and interesting game, and that's from Big Fun Games. Next is Planet Defenders from Wei Min Ling, and this is, I really like the story of this. In the year 2070, robots are used around the world, but one day a group of discarded robots suddenly recharge themselves and start acting out of control. So it's up to us as the good robots to wrangle these out of control robots, and we'll be using, you know, movement powers and things to go over the various planets. Only one person can be in a planet at the same time, so there can be some, you know, some blocking of the perfect path, and we will be upgrading abilities to make us more effective at trying to catch these rogue robots. And it looks like a very fast-paced, fun game. Next is Port Royal Unterwegs, and this is from Alexander Pfister, and this is a standalone, stripped-down sequel to Port Royal, which it would have to be very, very small to be stripped down from Port Royal. But as well as being its own standalone thing, there are some characters from it that can be used in Port Royal itself, so that sounds interesting. Next is Power Grid, the card game from Freedom and Freeze. I really like Power Grid. It's not as good with two, even with the robots. Don't enjoy it as much as with more players. But this is, you know, what you might expect from anything the card game. It's Power Grid without a board in 60 minutes. And it includes a special variant for two players in this, though, where there is a trust that people are controlling that sounds quite cool. It also includes a variant that can be included in normal Power Grid games, so that's cool as well. Next up, there is Rhine River Trade, and this is from Marco Canetta and Stefania Nicolini, and this is one of two games this year that are coming out at Essen from this duo that are transport themed as well. But this, so the first reason this caught my eye is it's the duo that designed Zhanguo a couple of years ago, and I love that game. And it looks like it's been in development for a while. I think there's this post in the forums saying we're hoping for it to come out at Essen 2013, so it looks like it's been delayed quite a while, but it's coming out now. We are transporting goods all over the place using the River Rhine, and we are using shared planes and trains and ships, but our own trucks to get things around. And we have to make sure things are going where they need to and make sure they're getting there on time as well. And I don't know much more about that. There's only Italian rules at the moment, but it sounds very interesting, and it's from a duo that just with Zhanguo have really intrigued me. Next up, Solarius Mission from Michael Keller and Andreas Odendahl. And this is, you know, another game from Spielworks. Spielworks make very fantastic, maybe heavier games. And this is a civilization science fiction game, which I know there's a ton of this year. But we are exploring planets and engaging in interplanetary trade. It has dice drafting in it, resource management. It sounds very good. But it's a Spielworks game. It's going to be very limited as well. Next up, Terraforming Mars by Jacob Frixelius. And this was in my top 10 Gen Con as well. It's another sci-fi building game, one after the other in an alphabetical list. But this time we are on Mars. We need to make it habitable for future generations. So we need to be sorting out, you know, the atmosphere and the environment and things on Mars. We get project cards to complete. It sounds like there's a ton in the box to really change things up every game. It has a solo mode that sounds very interesting. The only thing I'm a little bit kind of hesitant about is there seem to be very, very conflicting reports from people on the kind of take that and meanness that's in the game, because I wouldn't be able to play that multiplayer if it had that in it. And it seems like people are offering very differing opinions on whether it is or not. But still, it's going to be one of the hottest games there, I think. So might not even be able to get it anyway. But I will be definitely trying, because I've had a couple of requests for that already. Now we have Toria from Inka and Marcus Brand and Michael Reineck, and this is, you know, for a start, Inka and Marcus Brand, Murano, Village, and I'm sure a few others that are not coming to mind right now. I've loved those games that I mentioned anyway, but our goal in this game is to marry the prince or princess, and we are going to be roaming around the kingdom trying to gather hearts to win the heart of our love, and money to try and impress the king. And in the game, we have each corner of the board has got a 3D tower on it, and each side of the tower has got a different ability. So depending on where you're sitting on the table, you're going to have 4 abilities facing you at any one time. And the one you pick, you rotate that tower around, so you are affecting the abilities that are available for everyone else as well. That sounds like a really interesting little element, and it sounds like it looks really nice, and it's got really good designers behind it, so definitely interested in Turia. And finally, we've reached the end. It's Vinhos Deluxe Edition, and this is from Vital Lacerda, obviously, and I really like Vinhos. It's over there. There it is. And it's I really like it. It's really heavy game. Rachel didn't like it very much at all, but this has got another board that's kind of simplified. It takes a few things out, and so that might make it work better for her. But it also includes a solo mode, which I would really love to try, because the solo mode of the Gallerist is just amazing. And the new art's very nice as well. I like the old art, but the new art, you know, that kind of, the Gallerist kind of style, the very clean and functional style, looks very nice as well. I would miss in the simplified version the bank, though. I don't think the bank's in it anymore, and I really like that. I'd like to see that in more games where money you earn gets paid into the bank and you're earning interest and things in it, but if you want to actually go and do more things in the game, you're going to have to go to the bank and draw that out. And that is the end of this... not quite enormous, but it took a very, very long time to research all of these different games and look through the rule books and things. But that was the bulk of the Essen list. And if you would like to know what my top 10 games I'm excited about, or what expansions I'm excited about are, then you can click the links on the screen. But thank you very much for watching, and if you stuck this far, wow, thank you very much, and I'll see you for the next video. Bye everyone.